Plus, they publish all of their research on their site. They do so for free so that donors can understand their work. They're totally transparent. They understand their recommendations. For me, I found Give Directly. I don't think it's related to GiveWell, but Give Directly through GiveWell. They essentially just do what that says. You donate money, and they give it directly to people in desperate need, because study after study after study has shown that the best way to raise people out of extreme poverty, and poverty for that matter, is to give them money. And they know best how to spend it and help maintain and keep themselves out of desperate times. But they have other charities there that you may find more appealing, but all of them are rated based upon their efficacy. And all of the work that GiveWell has done is completely transparent. You can see it on their site. If you've never donated to GiveWell's recommended charities before, you can have your donation matched up to $1,000 before the end of June, or as long as their matching funds last. Just go to givewell.org/majority, pick podcast and the majority report at checkout, and they will match your funds up to $1,000. That's givewell.org/majority. Make sure to select podcast and the majority report at checkout to get your donation matched. I wonder if like these Hello Tushy guys write this stuff just to see if they can make me blush at any given point. But folks, many of us, obviously, COVID is, we're, hopefully on the right path. Things are looking good. Still, many of us scarred by the runs on toilet paper from early COVID. That is when I, on the advice of Kyle, signed up for a Hello Tushy bidet, and I've never looked back. See, there's a little bit of a pun. Hello Tushy's brand new 3.0 is a modern bidet attachment that is here, that is so easy to attach. You will, and it is frankly, far less expensive than I think people assume. It is a great way to assess whether a bidet is right for you. It's stylish, it's eco-friendly, it's easy to install. It even saves you cheap-ass money, as they say. Hello Tushy 3.0 doesn't just clean your butt with a precise stream of fresh water. It cleans itself. Has the Smart Spray automatic nozzle. It attaches to your existing toilet. Like I say, you don't have to have you don't have to have any electricity. You don't need any extra plumbing. You cut your toilet paper use by 80%. All you need to be able to know how to do is basically turn a wrench and those screws for the toilet seat. Super easy. Plus, Hello Tushy has you covered with a 60-day risk-free guarantee, a 12-month warranty. You can join millions of happy Hello Tushy customers right now. Clean your butt with every flush. Go to hellotushy.com/majority for 10% off plus free shipping. This is a special offer for the Majority Report listeners. Go to hellotushy.com/majority for 10% off. hellotushy.com/majority. And lastly, wouldn't it be nice if you had a pocket-sized guide to help you sleep or to focus or to just be better, feel better in the world? Well, there is. And if you have 10 minutes, Headspace can change your life. Headspace is your daily dose of mindfulness in the form of guided meditations in an easy-to-use app. It is one of the only meditation apps advancing in the field of mindfulness and meditation through clinically validated research. There are 25 published studies on Headspace benefits, 600,000 five-star reviews, over 60 million downloads. Need some help falling asleep? If you're feeling a little overwhelmed, I don't know, having just like trying to get calm, reintegrating into our post-COVID world, Headspace has wind-down sessions and 3-minute SOS meditations. There are even meditations for kids. It's been very helpful for my daughter, actually. Headspace works on your schedule, anytime, anywhere. I'm trying to get more into it. I'm trying to remember to do it when I can't fall asleep well. But also I've been, I'll do some meditations when I'm taking a walk. I always got to dual purpose things, as you know, folks. But Headspace makes it super easy to use. Like they say, there are 25 published studies on Headspace's benefits. Specifically, you deserve to feel happier. You deserve to feel more relaxed. Headspace is meditation made simple. Go to headspace.com/majority. That's headspace.com/majority for a free 1-month trial with access to Headspace's full library of meditations for every situation. This is the best deal available right now. Head to headspace.com/majority today. Okay, do we have Heather? Want to welcome back to the program Heather McGee. She's a senior fellow at Demos. She's the chair of the Board of Color Change and the author of her latest, The Sum of Us, What Racism Costs Everyone and How We Can Prosper Together. Heather, welcome back to the program. I'm here with Emma Vigeland.
Hey, Sam and Emma. Nice to be with you.
Thanks for being here.
So let's start with the pools, because that is the metaphor that describes your book, I think, most easily. But let's start with the pools, because this was a story I wasn't aware of, and it really does explain the concept here.
Yeah, I set out to write The Sum of Us really to figure out what happened to the country that had invented the greatest middle class the world had ever seen, and then really walked away from that formula in the 70s, 80s, and through to today, and replaced it with massive record inequality. And I understood the how, right? The tax changes, the labor market changes, et cetera. But I didn't understand the why, right? Why would we have done this to ourselves? And the story of what happened to America's nearly 2,000 mostly segregated public pools in America helped unlock a little bit of that mystery for me. And basically the story is that as part of the New Deal ethos, we built these grand, lavish, but public pools, and many of them were segregated. And when in the civil rights movement, Black families, sued to integrate them, a lot of towns, not just in the Jim Crow South, decided to drain their public pools rather than integrate them. Moved from a public good to a private luxury. So, rich families could have their backyard pools and their, swim clubs. But that really, for me, became a metaphor. The drained pool politics that has been an anti-government, pro-market politics that has had racial resentment and a sort of demonization of public goods once you have to share them with public that you don't believe to be good, as its sort of animating logic, which ultimately has hurt white people economically as well.
Oh, we lost Sam there. So I think that's such an incredible analogy, I guess, or way to a prism to look at your book, through. Can you just take us through, some of the social programs where essentially white people were kind of coerced into cutting off their nose to spite their face, essentially, or were convinced that cutting the social safety net was, more advantageous than, allowing Black people into it?
Yeah. In my book, I have a few pages dedicated to all the free stuff that the government gave to white families in the early 20th century as a way to build the middle class, and how much of that was racially exclusionary, like the pools. And when the party that was the party of the New Deal then said, we're going to be the party of civil rights as well, the majority of white voters stopped voting for Democrats and their, expansive economic agenda. Lyndon Johnson, after signing the Civil Rights Act and the Voting Rights Act, would be the last Democrat to win the majority of the white vote. I use the drain pool politics metaphor to talk about what happened to free college, right? Government used to pick up the tab for the cost of college at the state and federal levels. And as the college-going population became more diverse, we had this erosion of public support for generous state funding. There was always room for tax cuts at the state level, always room for more spending on jails and prisons. But the idea of really funding the youth really fell out of favor with more conservative lawmakers and more conservative leaning white voters. And so now we have replaced free college with this debt for diploma system. And that's another instance where white and black and brown families are suffering as well. Always, as my book takes pains to make clear, it's always worse for black families and brown families, right? All these economic impacts of racism, but we can't pretend like, the world is really zero sum and you can have profit on one side and loss on the other, for so long.
Sorry about that. I dropped off for just a moment. I want to go back to Hinton, Rowe, and Helper, the fascinating figure, both I guess pre and post-war Civil War. But let's talk about him pre-Civil War, and then I want to talk about him in terms of Reconstruction.
So Hinton, Rowe, and Helper is someone whose book I came across in the research for the book. Basically, he was a racist white Southerner who wrote a book that was very influential in abolitionist circles leading up to the Civil War, which made the painstaking case that slavery had impoverished the white South. And I talk about it in the book in terms of the ways in which the kind of plantation class, people who are very wealthy through an exploitative economic system, don't really need to fund public goods. They don't need a middle class, right? They don't need things outside of the closed system. And that impoverished the South. And that was the point that Hinton, Rowe, and Helper was making about slavery. And then, of course, you can see sort of parallels to that with today's, not plantation oligarchy, but it's a similar ethos, this idea we don't need public goods. And ultimately, they're going to shortchange all that we hold in common in a way that hurts everyone.
Yeah, I mean, he pointed to the lack, he was comparing essentially what kind of services, I think it was in the context of libraries, if I remember correctly.
Libraries, roads, schools, yep.
That existed in the North as opposed to the South. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, come Reconstruction, he's none too happy about what happens there, because despite the fact that he didn't like slavery, he also very much did not like black people having power. So, how does we see a parallel too with voting, right? At that point, mm-hmm. when we get into the Reconstruction era, we see, not too dissimilar to what we're seeing today, but we see the Supreme Court essentially allow for targeted restrictions on votings that were meant to exclude black people, but also excluded poor white people. And these same plantation owners and frankly just the elite had not too much of a problem with that either.
No, that was the goal, right? Basically, the point of the Sum of Us is to say that racism in our politics and our policymaking has always been a tool of the narrow, self-interested elite in order to convince the majority of white people to side with their color instead of their class, and to cleave the working class in half and make it impossible for the majority of the country to win the kinds of to take back power from the wealthy and the powerful. And so the attacks that happened, in the sort of first waves of voter suppression after the 15th Amendment, created universal male suffrage, were really aimed at attacking these rising populist fusion parties that were happening all over the South, where you had, landless black and white folks coming together to take on the big, sort of robber barons at the time, or who would become the robber barons, the big money elite. And so the goal was put together poll taxes, enforced by violence, intimidation at the polls. And in those poll tax states, you had extremely low voter turnout of black and white folks. And that's kind of a point that I try to make about today. Obviously, when we talk about voter suppression bills, they surgically target black voters, and yet, it sweeps in lots of women, lots of young people, lots of working class white folks who are less likely to have a photo ID. And that's the way they like it, right? They want a